Everyone is not your customer. If you're going to successfully run your business, you need to figure out who are the people most likely to buy and spend your time really focusing on those customers. My name is Lorraine Ball, and I'm a digital strategist, and I have been doing marketing for, well, decades. And although the tools have changed, I'm going to tell you that the same rules that applied to advertising long before I was born still apply. You need to focus on the people most likely to buy from you. And customers, they're not one size fits all. Even a company as big and as powerful as Coca-Cola has learned this. They know that there are lots of people that love their classic product, and there's a whole group of people that are not going to drink Coke for whatever reason. In my case, in a world filled with chocolate, why should I spend 150 calories on Coke? And so for me, there's a product called Diet Coke. Now, with a large company, they have the opportunity to create multiple products and hopefully identify different target audiences for each of their products. As a small business owner, you need to be content with one piece of the pie. You need to recognize that you're not going to convert a Diet Coke drinker into a Coke drinker, or vice versa. And what you need to do is just really focus on those people who like what you're selling. And in order to do that, you need to think about segmenting the market, dividing the market into different groups and identifying the characteristics that are associated with that group and building both products and marketing messages to meet the needs of those audiences. One of the easiest ways to divide your market is using demographics. This is a process of looking at observable characteristics. For example, dividing a market based on age, gender, types of careers, education, family status, or where they're located. And recognizing that your product might appeal to women with children or single men who are still living in apartments. As you identify these relevant characteristics, you can start breaking up the audience and potential audience into smaller and smaller segments. For example, I love using soap as an example because honestly, soap's a pretty basic product. But given how basic it is, the chemical compounds that make up most soaps, it is staggering the number of different products out there. Why? Because there are very distinct user groups. For example, let's take a look at just some of them. What are characteristics that might be relevant for soap? Well, age, gender, family status, and I'll show you why in a moment, career or income. So let's take a look at that. My first segment is younger women. They're married, they have children, and they may be on the low to mid range of the economic spectrum. Now you've got older women, maybe more divorced, more affluent. We've got young men, single, maybe they're still in school, and an older group of men, probably married, blue collar. These are not all of the possible segments. These are just a few that we've identified that are promising. What you want to do is you've identified these characteristics is decide which one of these makes the most sense for you. For a company like Procter & Gamble, these are all good potential markets that may require a little bit more diving into to figure out which one is really the most attractive. And if you're a smaller business, you're going to have to be more selective. But as you define these as these different segments, you want to visualize the customer. You don't just want that customer to be data points, young women with children. You want to give those customers a face and a name. So, my segment A, well, that's Brittany. And you can see there she's a new mom. Jennifer's an older, affluent woman. Jacob is a student. And David is my construction worker. So now instead of just thinking of these as segments, I can start thinking of these as people. Why? Because once I do this, both from a product design perspective and from a marketing perspective, I know who I'm talking to, and I can begin thinking about what's important to them. What makes them buy? What kind of hobbies do they have? Where do they spend their days when they're not buying my product? Because all of these things can help me decide, where do I advertise? What kind of advertising? And why do they buy my product? So here we go. Here's Brittany. She's family focused. And when she's thinking about soap, she's thinking about the little one. And she wants a soap product that's pure, that doesn't have a lot of chemicals and artificial things in it, because that may or may not be healthy for her baby. Jennifer, she's a career woman. If she's divorced, she's dating again. And one of the things that's really important to her is continuing to look young. And so she wants a soap that isn't going to dry out her skin. So benefits like moisture and anti-aging properties in her soap are going to be very important to her. Jacob, like many young men, is probably very interested in video games, but it's also about sports. He's outside playing basketball with his friends or at the gym. And when he comes home, he might be a little ripe. And so he's looking for a soap that takes care of the odors, because after he works out, he wants to go somewhere where he's going to impress a girl. And David, our construction worker, and he might also be a white collar guy, but maybe he has blue collar hobbies. He likes to work on cars on the weekend. Odds are he likes NASCAR and TV sports. And when he's looking at a soap, he's looking at grease removal. Kind of an interesting side note. WD-40 is one of those products that's in everybody's garage. It works really well at lubricating squeaky doors and all sorts of things. But also it gets on your hands and you can't get it off. Unless, of course, you've got lava soap. And so as you're looking at these different customers and you're thinking about what they need or want, you begin to think about what soaps or what products would be right for them. You also begin to look at, okay, how do I find these customers? How do I get to them? Where are they hanging out? And so you start to look at maybe how to reach them. This is interesting because it's not just social media. I'm going to see if I can, there we go, get the social media up there. Young moms, you're probably going to find them on Instagram and Facebook. Some of these older women, more likely to be on Facebook and Pinterest. Our young guy, well, he's probably on Snapchat and TikTok. And David might be more likely to be on YouTube. And you start to see, okay, well, are there different products for each of them? And there certainly are. Ivory soap. And if you look at the Ivory soap commercials, you can see that they stress purity. They're also a very inexpensive product. Jennifer might be more likely to gravitate to something like oil of Olay. This segment used to be owned by a company called Irish Spring, but these days that's the soap your grandfather uses, and Axe soap and deodorant is much more likely to be the soap of choice here. And lava soap, well, that belongs in this segment. And in addition to the social networks, you can also start getting creative in terms of what kind of promotions would you offer. The more you know about a customer, the easier it is to say, oh, We could run a contest and the prize might be a subscription to Oprah Magazine. Or we could run a contest and it might be tickets to a NASCAR race. Well, I can tell you, Ivory Soap is not going to do a NASCAR promotion. And Lava wouldn't be very effective if they were dropping coupons in new baby kits. And so the more you know about your customer, not just their demographics, but their hobbies, what are they looking for? Why are they buying this particular product? The easier it is to create advertising that speaks to them, that creates product design that is relevant for them. Segmentation, however, defines who you target, but not who you sell to. For example, my friend Denise uses Lava Soap. She is a middle-aged woman with an MBA. She would not show up on any segmentation report for Lava Soap. She loves to work on cars, on bicycles. She gets her hands dirty when she's not working. And so she buys Lava Soap. Are there a lot of Denises out there? There are some. But can Lava Soap afford to run a marketing campaign to find them? Probably not. There just aren't enough of them. And so in that instance, Lava Soap is like, great, they will come find me. And that's the difference between who you target and who you sell to. I'm not going to say to someone, I won't sell to them. I'm just not going to spend any money trying to attract people who are outside of my core. And this process works for B2B companies as well. The criteria are different. You might look at the size of a company. What industry are they in? What phase is their business? Are they startups? Are they mature? Are they in high growth? Are they in a particular geographic market? Or do they have particular issues? Are you an HR firm, so you're targeting companies with high turnover or large seasonal staffing needs? These are very specific niches that would make someone more or more attractive, make a company more and more attractive as a target for your business. So you might, again, look at tech companies that are in startup mode. Maybe you are more focused on home service companies in your community, or maybe you're looking at professional services and you're looking to launch in companies that want to expand into a new market. So you can see that these segments are very different. And again, you can start constructing your marketing around what these companies need. And they're not all equally attractive. Also, beyond the numbers, I want you to think about user behavior. And this is my favorite example, because on paper, these two brothers are exactly the same. They're twins. They both graduated college. They both have law degrees. They are both married. And so on paper, you would think they're the same. But imagine that the brother on the left is married to his high school sweetheart, and their youngest child is finishing up college. He's thinking about trading in the minivan for that two-seater Audi he always wanted. He and his wife are talking about taking that European vacation. The brother on the right is also married, but it's his second wife. And she's much younger than he is, and she's pregnant. Suddenly, his world is turned upside down, and he's going to sell that two-seater Audi, and he's not worried about retirement funds. He's concerned about a 529 account. His idea of vacationing in the next few years is going to be trips to Disneyland. And so you have to look beyond just demographics. And this is really where messaging in your marketing can help you reach and connect with these very, very different personas within a segment. When you're thinking about buyer behavior, you can divide your market based on usage habits, attitudes, and buying cycle. Are they purchasers who buy from you on a regular basis, or are they people that only buy once a year or maybe only one time? You can divide and subdivide your segment using some of these characteristics. And this is where personas come in. And a lot of times I think personas or people confuse personas with your target. A persona is really a subset, and it is a group of people who share some similarities inside of your target. And what you want to do is you want to really think about each of these different groups of people and think about who they are, why they might buy your product, what are their goals, what are their pains. Again, you want to come up with a photograph that represents that persona. Consider both demographics and psychographics, and maybe think about some of the brands and the products that they would buy besides your product. This tool, the persona, is really something that either you use to guide your marketing or you share with your marketing company to help them come up with relevant messages that target these subgroups within your larger target audience. And the quotes are things that these people might say to you about your product or service. This is a sample persona, and it's designed to humanize the data. Again, you see a picture of a person. You've got a quote where she's talking about what's important to her, a little bit of an overview of who she is, goals, frustrations, what motivates her. And then here you've got some of the brands that she uses. Why is that brand section so important? Well, I'll give you an example. Years ago, I was designing a logo for a very high-end optometrist with a retail eyewear store. And his plan was only to sell high-end designer frames, Tom Ford, Dolce & Gabbana, Michael Kors, Kate Spade. And so as we were designing the logo for his company, we started looking at all of those other brands because those were the brands that his customers were going to be buying. And what we realized was all of those brands, all of those company names were written in all cap. And so we realized if his brand was going to stand in a customer's mind alongside his designers, we had to use all capital letters in his logo as well. We needed to look like we belonged in the club. And so as you're creating your customer personas and you're thinking about how do I look like I fit their world, considering some of their other brands is very important. And then what you need to do is you need to put your personas side by side. You may have 2 or 3 different segments. And what this allows you to do is now start creating marketing messages for each one of them. It may be the same message, but it may not be. While Sandy and Ellen are both women, Sandy is really a lot younger. And she might still be a student. And so suddenly what's important to her might not be important to Ellen. And I want to make sure that you don't forget your B2B customers, because behind the companies are the decision makers. So who is it that you're going to be selling to? Is it Bob, the owner, or Fred, the purchasing manager? Because their priorities will be different. And when you know their goals, when you know their pain, you can create ads that really speak to that pain. This is an ad from a company called Conseco, and I worked for them 20 years ago. And they did a lot of things wrong, but their advertising was brilliant. Because what we had done as a company is we understood our customers' pain. We made a decision not to target high net worth individuals, but to target people in the middle, people who were concerned about their retirement, people who were afraid that a big medical bill would bankrupt them. We also knew that our audience, they were resilient, they were creative, they would come up with a way to pay their bills. And in research, we found they had a good sense of humor. And so a lot of our campaigns were a little dark, a little edgy, and a little funny. This one really was for our medical insurance products. And it played off this idea that if you went to a restaurant and you couldn't pay the bill, you might be asked to wash the dishes, and extended that to a hospital. And so you have a patient with an IV bag washing dishes in what is obviously the hospital cafeteria kitchen. What these ads did was they really spoke to very specific pain. They were dark, they were edgy. A lot of the traditional financial agencies at the time were appalled at these ads because they were so out of sync and so unusual for the market. But the customers, they loved them. Okay, we've been talking a lot about how important it is for you to focus in on a segment to define your ideal clients. But there is another piece of that pie, or another piece of that puzzle, and that is the piece of pie that you've selected big enough? Is this audience large enough to support your business? And so as you think about segments, make sure that you know roughly how big the total market is and that you are realistic about how big a percentage of that business you can get. For example, there are 500 companies that hit a profile in your market, and you need 100 of them to buy from you. You better be sure that you don't have a lot of competition. On the other hand, if there are 5,000 companies in a marketplace and you only need 50, now you've got a good sized market with enough revenue potential. If you realistically think you can get 50 companies to do business with you, how much is the average sale, and is it enough to pay your bills? And what opportunities are there within that segment for repeat businesses? This calculation is going to be different for every company, but it is something that you need to look at as you're targeting and segmenting. I had a client that thought he was going to open up a retail store to sell bunk beds to college students, these sort of construction kits that allowed you to loft the bed over your desk. He would have great sales in August and nothing the rest of the year. And we ran the numbers to figure out, could he physically sell enough beds in that 1 month period to pay the rent the other 11 months? And the answer was no. And we convinced him instead to get a 1 month lease on a retail space close to a college campus and have a little pop-up business that was gone at the end of the month. Another piece of the ideal client puzzle is looking at who are your best customers? Who do you like doing business with? And who do you want to do business with? And does that line up? There are essentially 5 types of clients: too small, acceptable, typical, ideal, and too large. This is where most of your customers will fall. They'll be approximately the same size, similar requirements. If you're running a business that is sustainable, you're going to have some nice typical clients. There'll be a few people that are a little bit on the small side, but they're okay when you're trying to fill in your gap. And this is your ideal. People who are maybe a little bit bigger, can pay a little bit more for your services. Maybe you have a few of them. Maybe you don't really have a lot of them yet. On the outsides are the too small and the too large. Too small, these companies don't want, or these customers don't want to pay enough for your services. They can't afford you. And disproportionately, they will suck more resources than your typical client, and they're paying less. On the other side of the equation, the too large. We've all been there. We've all been really excited about a conversation with a business or a conversation with a customer. They're way bigger than we're used to, and the project sounds really exciting. It's nothing like what we've ever done before. These are actually really risky because, number one, it's going to take a lot of resources to fulfill that project, and it may or may not fit with everything else that you're doing. And you may turn off a lot of these people. In a way, this is like a whale that can crush you. Often, it is better to find people who work with this size as their typical or ideal and refer that in exchange for more typical clients coming to you. Over time, you may see these lines shifting. For example, when I first started doing web design, when I was just getting my feet wet and I was doing $900 websites, most of my clients were here. But as we raised our price to $1,500, $2,500, $5,000, suddenly we found that our whole pyramid shifted. And suddenly the really small clients were too small for us. But there were still the $20,000 websites that we just didn't want to do. Knowing where your clients fall within this spectrum is really important. And who do you want to work with? Think about who your favorite clients are. What are the characteristics that they share? We did this exercise one time where we had everybody in the team answer the question, if we could only work with 3 customers, who would it be? And what we did once we got that list was we started to look for the characteristics. What was it about those customers that made everybody on the team say, yeah, they should be on their list? We found that there were certain industries we really liked working with. We found that there were certain people within the organization that really needed to be involved in the process for it to make it a good experience for us and for us to do our best work. And conversely, I asked the team, if we could fire one client, who should we fire? In general, there was good agreement, and it was typically companies that were not as committed to the process as we were. But sometimes there'd be an outlier, and everyone on the team would be like, oh my God, we just need to get rid of that client. And one of my web designers would be like, I really like working with Mary. Great. You can be the account exec for Mary. And so having those conversations, identifying who you like working with and who's not a good fit for you, is more than just a personality game, because it becomes the foundation of your marketing. You can begin to target those ideal customers. You can begin to really look at, who do you want to work with? Who is the best fit for you? And who isn't? And start constructing marketing messages that will drive more of those people to your door. Okay, now is a great time for questions if you have them.